When you picture an airport, what comes to mind? Probably jet fuel, noise, emissions, right? Well, what if I told you that whole picture is starting to change, and fast? Airports are actually becoming pioneers of sustainability, totally rethinking their role in our future. So let's dive into how this massive transformation is taking shape.
First things first, let's just set the stage. The entire aviation industry is responsible for about 2 to 3% of all global CO2 emissions. Now, that might not sound like a huge number on its own, but it's significant, and it's one the industry absolutely knows it has to tackle head-on.
And they're not just talking about it. The industry has set this incredibly ambitious goal to get to net zero carbon emissions by the year 2050. A commitment like that is driving a massive wave of innovation, especially in the one place they have the most control, the airports themselves. So here's what we're going to walk through. We'll start with a big challenge, then look at the blueprint for a truly green airport. We'll get into how they're generating power and electrifying everything, how they're managing resources like water and waste, and then tackle the huge issue of sustainable fuel before we look ahead to the airport of tomorrow. All right, let's jump in with the fundamental shift in thinking that's really making all of this possible. So the core idea here is that airports are flipping the script. Instead of just being seen as part of the problem, they're actively becoming these living laboratories for green infrastructure, proving that these huge, complex operations can also be models of environmental responsibility. Okay, so how do you actually build a green airport? Well, it all starts with the foundation, the buildings themselves. And the gold standard for that is something called LEED certification. The easiest way to think about it is like the ultimate report card for a green building. It measures pretty much everything: energy use, water efficiency, even the kinds of materials they use to build the thing. And Newark's new Terminal A is a perfect example of this in the real world. It's not just about one cool feature, it's the whole system working together. You've got the largest airport solar roof in the entire US. It slashes its water demand by almost half, cuts energy costs, and, get this, it's even designed to be resilient against future sea level rise. That's the blueprint in action. So once the buildings are green, how do you power them? This is where things get really, really exciting. Back in 2015, an airport in Kerala, India, did something that was truly revolutionary. Cochin International became the world's very first airport to be powered entirely by the sun. And they didn't just stop there. Today, with all their solar panel installations, the airport has a total capacity of 80 megawatts. That's actually more power than the airport needs to run its day-to-day operations. So they're not just a power consumer, they're a power producer, sending the extra energy back to the state grid. And the impact is just staggering. Over a 25-year period, this one project prevents 300,000 tons of CO2 from hitting the atmosphere. To put that in perspective, that's like planting 3 million trees. It's so significant that the airport earned the UN's highest environmental honor. Now, beyond just generating clean energy, airports are also changing how they use it. Think about all those vehicles on the tarmac. The baggage carts, the pushback tractors, they're a huge source of on-site pollution. Switching them to electric is a total game changer. It means zero emissions right there on the ground, cleaner air for workers and travelers, and lower operating costs. It's a win-win-win. Of course, sustainability is about more than just energy. It's also about creating a circular system for other critical resources, especially water and waste. Airports use a ton of water, but they're getting incredibly smart about managing it. You've got San Francisco harvesting rainwater for its landscaping, and then there's Bangalore's airport, which is just a masterclass. They treat their own wastewater on site to reuse it in toilets and cooling systems, and they've even built over 300 wells to help replenish the local groundwater. And what about all the waste? Well, sometimes the simplest ideas are the most powerful. Austin's airport took a really straightforward approach. 1, add more recycling bins. 2, put a recycling bin right next to every single trash can. 3, make collection easier for the staff. The results? They doubled the amount of waste they diverted from landfills in just 1 year. Okay, so airports are making huge strides in cleaning up their own operations. But we have to talk about the elephant on the runway, the planes themselves. So this right here is the crucial point. Everything we've talked about so far, the solar panels, the electric vehicles, the recycling, that all addresses an airport's direct on-the-ground emissions. That accounts for about 5% of its total carbon footprint. The other 95%, that comes from the aircraft taking off and landing. This is the single biggest piece of the puzzle. And the key to solving this lies in something called sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. In simple terms, it's a biofuel made from things like used cooking oil or agricultural waste, and you can blend it directly with traditional jet fuel. The best part? It's a drop-in fuel that can slash a flight's carbon emissions by up to 80%. But here's the catch. Just look at this gap. In 2023, the entire world produced about 500,000 tons of SAF. To meet that 2050 net zero goal, the industry needs 400 million tons every single year. So scaling up production is this monumental task that's going to require massive investment and innovation. This brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. What does the future hold, and what's the actual roadmap to get us there? Well, the path forward is getting clearer. By 2030, we can expect electric ground fleets to be pretty much standard. Then, around 2035, we should see the very first short-haul aircraft powered by hydrogen enter service. All of these milestones are building blocks toward that critical 2050 deadline for net zero. And, this isn't just wishful thinking. There are systems in place to keep everyone accountable. Programs like the Airport Carbon Accreditation actually track and certify an airport's progress, creating this transparent step-by-step journey from just measuring emissions to achieving true carbon neutrality. So it's clear that airports are doing their part. They're transforming themselves from polluters into producers of green energy and genuine models of sustainability. The technology is there, the blueprint exists. But the final question really is, with that 2050 clock ticking, can the rest of the aviation world, the fuel producers, the airlines, scale their solutions fast enough to meet this moment? The flight path is set, but the journey has really just begun.